My name is Elijah Ramirez. I'm 15 years old, living in a crowded barangay in Quezon City. I thought I knew what mattered in life: basketball, passing my algebra tests, and maybe whether Camille Santos would look at me during lunch. I wasn't thinking about heaven or God or anything beyond my screen. TikTok Mobile Legends scrolling until my eyes blurred. That Tuesday afternoon felt just like any other. The sun was dipping behind the high rise buildings, and the air smelled like street food and exhaust. I was heading home, earphones in, thinking about asking Camille to the school dance. Then it happened. I stepped onto the crosswalk on Aurora Boulevard. My phone buzzed and I glanced down just for a second. A white SUV speeding. No brakes, no warning, just impact. I didn't even have time to scream. All I remember is the sound tires screeching, a sickening thud, and then silence. But I wasn't gone, not completely. Suddenly, I was above my body, looking down. My shoes were off. Blood pooled beneath my head. A small crowd gathered. A tricycle driver blocked traffic. Someone yelled, "Tumawag ng ambulansya." I saw my mom rushing toward me. Her screams cut through everything. "Elijah, anak ko." I wanted to move, to tell her I was fine, but I couldn't. I wasn't in my body anymore. I wasn't in this world anymore. Behind me, a light appeared. Not like sunlight or a flashlight, no, this light was alive. It pulsed with peace and power. It didn't speak, but I felt it calling me. Not with words, but through something deeper, through the very core of who I was. It felt like going home to a place I'd never been but always longed for. I turned toward it and I moved. And in that moment, one truth sank deep into me: this isn't the end. It was only the beginning. What I was about to see, what I was about to hear, would change everything I believed about life, about church, about politics, and about Jesus himself. When I opened my eyes, except I wasn't really using my eyes, I saw my own body lying there in the middle of the road. Mang Larry, the tricycle driver who lived 2 blocks from us, was yelling for help. My classmate Tina was frozen on the sidewalk, her mouth open, her phone shaking in her hand. And there I was, sprawled on the pavement. Blood was trickling from my forehead, soaking into my uniform. But I felt nothing. No pain, no fear, just peace. Like a thick blanket of stillness wrapped around my soul. Then I started floating. Not up like a balloon, but forward. I could still see everything: the panic, the people running, the sirens blaring somewhere in the distance. Yet none of it felt urgent. It was like watching a movie I was no longer a part of. That's when I saw it: a tunnel, but not the kind you find in Edisa construction zones. This one glowed golden, alive, warm. It felt like a song you almost remember from childhood, the kind your Lola used to hum while you sat on her lap during storms. I was drawn to it not because someone pushed me, but because my whole being wanted to go. Every step toward the light made my heart feel fuller. My fears about school friends, my parents' constant fights, all of it began to melt like sugar in warm water. Then the light grew even brighter. I had to cover my eyes, but even when I did, the glow passed through my hands. That's when I heard the voice, not with my ears, but deep, deep inside me. Ramon. I froze. Ramon, anak, it was my name. Spoken not with scolding or urgency, but with a love I had never heard before. Not from my father, not even from Nanay when she was still healthy. This voice knew me, every part, every secret, every moment I had cried alone in the school restroom. Every time I had laughed too loudly just to hide the ache. And then I saw him. He stood at the end of the tunnel, a figure of pure light. Yet somehow I could still see his face. Not the same face from the dusty calendar in our chapel. No, this one radiated kindness. His eyes were soft, but they held the weight of eternity. His smile, it wasn't just joy. It was understanding, sorrow, compassion, power. Jesus. I didn't need anyone to tell me. My soul knew. He walked toward me slowly, every step pulsing like a heartbeat across the light. And as he neared, the world around me faded. The tunnel vanished. The noise of earth sirens, shouts, cell phones, all gone. There was only him and me and love.
Ramon, I've been waiting for you, anak.
I wanted to speak, but my mouth couldn't form words. Only tears came, hot, endless tears I didn't know I had held back my whole life.
You are not dead, but you are not fully alive either. You are in between. Because I needed to speak to you. Because my people have forgotten.
I trembled, not in fear but in awe. Every part of me wanted to fall to the ground, to hold on to his feet and never let go.
I will show you what they no longer see. I will open your eyes to what lies beneath the noise. And when you return, you must tell them.
And just like that, he reached out and touched my shoulder. The tunnel disappeared. The golden light collapsed into a swirl of stars. And suddenly, I was somewhere else, floating above the world. And what I saw next would change everything I believed. When I opened my eyes again, everything around me had changed. The golden warmth of Jesus' presence still surrounded me, but we were no longer in that glowing meadow. Instead, we stood high above what looked like a spinning globe. My eyes focused, and I saw the United States of America stretching out beneath us like a glowing map. But something was wrong. Dark clouds hovered over the land. Not physical ones, but spiritual. They moved slowly like smoke from invisible fires choking cities and drifting across towns, casting long, heavy shadows over people's homes, churches, and hearts. I turned to Jesus confused. "What is this, Lord?" I whispered.
This is the condition of many hearts in this land, Miguel. A land once rich in faith, now drowning in division. Not because of politics alone, but because they have forgotten me.
I looked closer and saw churches, hundreds of them. Some were grand and majestic, filled with gold-lined pews and brilliant stained glass windows. Others were small, humble places in neighborhoods and towns. But inside many of them, the scene chilled my heart. People were yelling, debating, fighting. Some waved signs with political slogans. Others clutched tightly to their traditions, their pride shining brighter than any cross. They weren't worshiping, they weren't praying, they were performing. One church even had a banner reading "God and country" in that order. But inside there was no God, just noise.
They gather in my name, but their hearts are far from me. They praise me with their lips, but their spirits chase after men.
Then he waved his hand and a vision came to life. I saw the church service. The pastor stood at the pulpit, but instead of opening the Bible, he opened a political playbook. The people cheered. They weren't hungry for righteousness. They were hungry for reassurance that their views were right.
This is not the church I died for. This is not the bride I will return for.
I wanted to look away, but Jesus gently placed his hand on my shoulder. He wanted me to see it, to truly understand. So I watched. Suddenly, I was in another room. This time it was a private gathering. Men in suits, women in elegant dresses, speaking in whispers, making decisions about millions of lives. But there was no prayer in their council. Just strategy. Just ambition.
These are the councils of power that shape nations, but not through love, not through truth. They have exchanged compassion for control and holiness for hierarchy.
I saw Christians clapping for political leaders as if they were saviors. Statues of Jesus were placed beside posters of presidents. Bibles laid untouched while political manifestos were highlighted and quoted as sacred truth. Why are they doing this? I asked.
Because many have forgotten their first love. They believe power can protect them. They believe policies can save them. But no nation was ever redeemed through pride.
His words pierced me. I felt tears fall, but then he showed me something even more terrifying. I saw dark creatures, shadows with no eyes, whispering into the ears of churchgoers. They're against you. Fight for your side. They don't love God like you do. These lies poured like poison and people drank them without question.
The enemy is not flesh and blood, but many have made each other the enemy. The devil no longer has to attack the church from the outside. He simply sits in the pews, whispering division into willing ears.
Then I saw President Donald Trump, but not on a stage. He was alone in a room, shoulders slumped, his eyes full of pain. There were photographs of his family nearby, but they were distant emotionally, spiritually. He looked lost.
He is just a man, Miguel, imperfect, like all of them. But my people either worship him or curse him. Neither is love.
I was silent, overwhelmed.
Tell them this truth. When my people worship politicians, they lose sight of me. When they hate leaders instead of praying for them, they lose my heart.
Jesus' voice was firm, yet soaked in sorrow. I saw his eyes wet with tears. We remained suspended above that vision of America, Jesus' hand still warm on my shoulder, grounding me in a reality I could hardly name. The shadows drifted like smoke, carrying whispers that I couldn't quite grasp at first, until Jesus spoke.
Now, Miguel, watch closely. This is the true battlefield.
Before me, the scene shifted. I found myself in a dimly lit room, less grand than the churches, more hidden. Around a long table sat leaders, pastors, politicians, media figures, military generals, all wearing polished smiles. But the cracks were already showing cold glances. Hands closed over fanned wads of cash, eyes darting in fear and greed. At the head of the table sat a figure cloaked in darkness. Not wholly human, something else fallen. Its presence didn't shout evil, it whispered it. It was composed not of flesh, but of influence. Quiet, clever, invasive, and feeding on the pride of men. I felt a chill deeper than cold.
You are looking at the Council of Control. They are crafting the narrative, breeding division, redirecting faith into allegiance to men.
My heart pounded. The pastor at the table raised his voice. We need unity behind strong leadership. The world must see our strength. A governor nodded. If we ignore these sins, we'll lose our base. We must enforce loyalty. And all along, that fallen being just watched. It whispered in their ears, sowing fear, stoking pride, erasing mercy.
See how they exalt themselves, claiming to speak in my name. Yet their words sow hate, not healing. They hide behind religion, using it like armor, not allowing my spirit to soften their hearts.
In my mind, I saw a church congregation cheering. Bibles closed, hearts closed. Jesus was absent from their midst. The pulpit became a stage for rhetoric, not repentance. Then the scene shifted again. We were now outside. Blackness is spilled from mega churches. Crosses illuminated by floodlights. Yet the air around them felt contaminated, repellent. On the steps, pastors in designer suits basked in applause. Below, hungry children and battered families looked on invisible.
They forgot this is my church, not their campaign rally. Those children cannot eat your words or sit under your praise.
I blinked back, tears. The enemy was winning not by overt attack, but by infiltration. By replacing grace with pride. By selling power instead of pointing to the cross. I watched as a mother carrying groceries walked past one of these churches. She wiped her brow and heard the speech. She glanced up, eyes hardened, turned away. Over time, she stopped praying.
They lose their mercy. They lose their humility. They lose their neighbor, and in the process, they lose you.
I felt anger swell, but Jesus' presence held that anger, transforming it into sorrow.
It breaks my heart to see my people used as political pawns, to see families divided, to hear love traded for loyalty to ideologies.
Within the same vision, I saw demons again, this time leaning into smartphone screens. They whispered during worship songs, during prayers, streamed online during bedtime devotions. They rewrote hearts, they rewrote stories.
These deceitful forces are not targeting the curious or the rebellious. They target the pious, the faithful, because when they corrupt the faithful, the whole world sees religion as hypocrisy.
I trembled. This wasn't just about politics. It was about the soul of a nation. It was about whether Christ's church would rise as a beacon or collapse into noise. Then, amid the darkness, a flicker. A group of believers praying quietly, kneeling in a circle in a small backyard. No cameras, no microphones, just real hearts pouring out real prayers for homeless people, for addicts, for politicians, even the broken ones.
These whispers, they rise like incense. They stitch what is torn. They push back the darkness.
I felt a warmth return to my chest. These hidden prayers were like stars in the night sky, far apart but shining hopeful in their quiet brilliance.
You must tell them, Miguel. Tell them that the enemy is not outside. He is inside. And the cure is not confrontation, it is confession. Not shouting it is surrender.
My heart broke and healed in the same moment. I saw how toxicity spread over social media, over pulpits, over living rooms. But I also saw the antidote: tears, kneeling, broken hearts, saying, Lord, forgive us, heal us, use me.
The power of evil is real, but the power of the meek is stronger. The power of confession is stronger. The power of prayer is stronger.
It was a sacred truth I hadn't known before. He gave me a mission in that moment, not to fight the council, but to expose it with the dark. Not to argue, but to love. Not to win followers, but to plant prayers.
When my people pray real prayer, I move. When religion wields power, nothing changes.
Then the vision cracked like a window. Light surged. We lifted away. And I felt the engine of mission turning inside me. The darkness faded. The smoke of deceit, the shadows of political idols, the whispers of division, they all dissolved like morning mist under a rising sun. I blinked, adjusting to the sudden brightness. Then, without warning, Jesus touched my shoulder once more.
Miguel, now I will show you not what is, but what could be if my people return to me with undivided hearts.
Suddenly, I found myself looking down at the same America, but different. The air pulsed with color, not just light, but warmth. The cities I had seen shadowed before were now gleaming. Streets weren't silent with fear, but alive with laughter, music, prayer. There was a hum, a divine frequency, as if the ground itself was exhaling peace. In one corner of this renewed world, I saw churches, small, ordinary buildings with flaking paint and creaky floors. But the people inside them, they radiated something more powerful than stained glass or spotlights. Their hands were raised not in performance but in surrender. Their prayers weren't polished, they were raw, honest, weeping prayers. And they were hurt.
This is what happens when my people strip away the pride and remember who I really am.
I saw a pastor stepping down from a marble pulpit. He took off his suit jacket and joined a group of single mothers cooking a meal for their neighbors. No cameras, no fanfare, just love in motion. An old woman placed her hand on a crying teenager's back, no sermon, just presence. In another city, I saw people gathering not to protest, not to pick sides, but to repent together. Republicans and Democrats embracing. Former enemies crying in each other's arms. The media didn't understand it, but heaven celebrated it. Then Jesus showed me schools, not perfect places, but safe ones. I saw teachers praying over their classrooms, not loud or dramatic, but quietly between bells. Students were listening again, not just to lectures, but to each other. There was kindness in the way they passed their lunch trays, in the way they lifted each other after a bad grade. Then I saw something that made my breath catch: homeless shelters not filled with sadness, but with hope. Drug addicts walking in, chained, and living with light in their eyes. Former prisoners standing on the stages holding Bibles not as props, but as passports to freedom.
This is what my kingdom looks like when my people stop chasing power and start chasing me.
He wasn't showing me perfection. There were still tears. There were still struggles, but there was also healing. A young boy with autism was hugged by classmates who used to tease him. A woman who once had nothing now led worship in a community garden filled with rescued souls. I saw churches partnering with mosques and synagogues to serve the poor, not compromising their beliefs, but living out love. I saw politics handled with humility. Elections where people prayed more than they posted. Debates that ended in shared meals. Most beautiful of all, I saw families. Fathers apologizing to their sons. Mothers praying with their daughters, husbands and wives turning off their phones and turning toward each other. Love wasn't just spoken, it was proven.
When love becomes the mission, Miguel, the war ends before it begins.
I could hardly breathe. It was a glimpse of heaven on earth. And then Jesus showed me one last scene, a church service in a barrio that reminded me of my own in Quezon City. The electricity was flickering, the fan blades squeaked, but the worship, it shook the heavens. People weren't there to be seen, they were there to be changed. Children danced with abandon. Elders lifted trembling hands. A man in the back whispered, "Forgive me, Lord. I made it all about me," and heaven heard him.
This revival isn't coming with celebrity pastors or televised conferences. It's coming through broken hearts, willing to be vessels. It starts in hidden corners, in surrendered souls, in simple obedience.
And then Jesus looked at me again, his gaze tender yet blazing, locked with mine.
Tell them, Miguel, tell them it is not too late. The future is not written in fear, it can be rewritten in faith.
I wept because I saw what could be. Because I saw how close we were to losing it all, and how close we still were to reclaiming it. The path was narrow, but it was still open. The vision faded slowly, like a sunset, reluctant to let go of the sky. All the warmth, the unity, the revival I had just witnessed gone in a breath. Now I stood once more in that sacred place, face to face with Jesus, the very embodiment of perfect love. I couldn't hold back anymore. My knees gave way and I fell to the ground trembling.
Miguel, what you've seen is not just a dream, it is a calling.
I lifted my head and my eyes wet. Do I have to go back? I wasn't trying to be disrespectful, but I had never felt peace like this, never known joy so pure. On earth, I was just an ordinary Filipino teenager from a noisy barangay in Quezon City, struggling with math, drowning in social media, trying to stay invisible in a world that never slowed down. But here I was known, loved, whole. Jesus stepped closer. His presence silenced every fear.
Yes, Miguel, you must go back, because there are thousands like you, broken, confused, weary, and they need to know what you now know.
But I'm just a kid, I whispered. I don't have the words. Who's going to believe me? Who's going to care?
I've always used the small, the weak, the young to shame the proud and powerful. Moses stuttered. David was overlooked. Mary was a teenage girl. You don't need status, you need surrender.
The wind around us grew still. In the distance, I heard the faint sound of weeping like echoes from earth. Families torn apart by politics. Children begging for food while churches argued about doctrines. I felt it all, and it broke me. I stood to my feet slowly, unsure but willing. What exactly do you want me to tell them? Jesus reached for my hand. His touch was gentle, but what I felt surged through me like fire.
Tell them their hope is not in a president, not in a party, not in any earthly power. Tell them their hope is in me. Tell them the enemy's greatest trick isn't destruction, it's distraction. If Satan can't destroy the church, he'll divide it until it destroys itself.
I nodded, tears streaming again. My voice cracked. But what if they mock me? What if I fail?
Faithfulness is never failure. Not everyone will listen, but some will, and that is enough.
He then showed me something else. I saw my own home, our tiny, worn-out living room. My mother sitting on the couch, clutching my school ID, sobbing. My father pacing outside, his eyes red. My younger brother watching the door, whispering, "Kuya, come home."
They need you too. You are not being sent alone. I go with you.
Then, with infinite tenderness, Jesus placed both his hands over my heart.
I am placing my fire inside you, Miguel, not a fire of anger, but of love. It will burn bright. It will shake hearts. And when you feel alone, remember what you've seen. Remember me.
His words settled into me like seeds in deep soil. I didn't want to go, but I couldn't stay. There was a mission now, etched into my spirit, one louder than fear, greater than my age, more urgent than my comfort. Jesus smiled one last time. That smile, it was home, heaven, and healing all at once.
Go. Tell them I love them. Tell them I miss them. Tell them the hour is late, but not too late.
The light around me began to shift. Sounds faded. My breath caught. And then pain noise, cold air. I was back, hospital beeping, IV tubes, the sharp sting of light overhead, my mother screaming my name, doctors rushing in, my chest rising and falling. I was alive, and I remembered everything. They called it a miracle. Clinically dead for 9 minutes, no brain damage, full recovery. But what the hospital couldn't explain, I now carried inside me a divine message that burned through every fiber of my soul. In the days that followed, I tried to speak about it. At church, at school, online. Some laughed, some wept. Others said I was imagining things. But I didn't need their approval because I had seen him and I knew what I was called to do. I used to think courage was something loud, like shouting in front of crowds or standing on stage with lights in your face. But I learned quickly, it's not. Courage was telling my story for the first time to people who didn't believe me, to classmates who laughed under their breath, to friends who said, "Para, you died and met Jesus seriously," to adults at church who smiled politely but never invited me back to speak. But I kept speaking because I remembered his voice.
Not everyone will believe, but those who do will be changed forever.
At first, I told the story quietly at our small Bible study group. Then someone asked me to speak during youth fellowship. After that, my kuya posted a video of my testimony online and it went viral. Not millions of views viral, but enough that people started messaging me, asking questions, some angry, some desperate. A girl from Cebu messaged, "Is it true that Jesus showed you Trump is not our hope, that God still loves us even if we've messed up?" A mother from Mindoro wrote, "My family is broken, but when I heard Jesus say we should stop fighting and start loving, I just cried. That's what we needed." And little by little, I saw what Jesus meant. The fire inside me was spreading, quietly, patiently. Not like wildfire, but like candlelight in the dark. But it wasn't always easy. Some members of our church didn't like what I said about politics. One Sunday, a deacon approached me after service and said, "You shouldn't speak about Trump or Duterte or any president like that. Just focus on heaven, okay?" But how could I ignore it? Jesus didn't avoid hard topics. He went straight into them.
Tell them I'm not Republican, not Democrat, not any human label. I am love.
So I kept telling the truth. I told them what I saw: Christians fighting each other, forgetting to pray, forgetting to love. I described the demons that laughed when churches became divided. I talked about the idols we made of politicians and how it broke Jesus' heart. Some said I was too bold, others said I was too soft, but I didn't care about pleasing either side. I just wanted to be faithful. Sometimes I would sit alone at night staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was doing enough, wondering if anyone really changed. Then I remembered what Jesus showed me: homeless people being fed, addicts getting healed, churches uniting, not dividing. That was the future if we obeyed. And even if I couldn't change the whole country, I could still change my barangay, my school, my family. One day, my own father came to my room, sat down, and said, "Miguel, when you were in the hospital, I prayed for the first time in years." He looked at his calloused hands. "I used to think church was just politics too. But when I heard you talk about Jesus being brokenhearted over us, I realized I was part of the problem." He started going back to church, quietly, humbly. And my mom, she now leads a women's prayer group in our community. They don't talk about candidates anymore. They talk about forgiveness. And my classmates, one day, after a presentation I gave at a local youth conference, a guy I barely knew pulled me aside. He was tall, muscular, kind of intimidating. He whispered, "I used to hate Christians. My brother and I stopped speaking after the last election. But what you said, I called him this morning. We're meeting for coffee this weekend." That's when I realized this message is not just about Trump or America or even the Philippines. It's about all of us, about how we've lost sight of what matters. We've replaced grace with grudges, worship with arguments, love with loyalty to parties.
My people are fighting the wrong battles. While they argue over politics, the enemy steals their children, poisons their joy, and silences their witness.
So I kept going, speaking in youth rallies, writing devotionals, making videos, even when I was tired, even when I was scared. And every time someone said I used to hate my uncle for who he voted for, but now I'm praying for him instead. I knew the fire was still burning. I may be young, I may be small, but I've seen heaven. I've seen Jesus. And once you've looked into his eyes, you can't keep quiet. If you've come this far, maybe you feel what I felt that day in heaven. That gentle burning love, that truth too powerful to ignore. This wasn't just my story. This is our wake-up call. Jesus didn't show me those things so I could keep them to myself. He didn't let me come back from death just to return to algebra tests and basketball games. He sent me back because the world needs to hear one thing loud and clear.
The world will not know me by your politics, but by your love.
If we keep choosing sides over souls, if we keep shouting louder than we listen, then we are helping the enemy do his job. We are driving people away from Jesus, not toward him. But if we choose love, radical, humble, Christ-like love, then everything changes. We can stop idolizing leaders and start interceding for them. We can stop fearing the future and start walking in faith. We can stop fighting each other and start fighting for each other. That's the real revolution. That's the real revival. Not on ballots, not in rallies, but in our hearts. So what now? If you've ever found yourself angry at someone because of their vote, stop and pray. If you've ever put a politician on a pedestal higher than Jesus, it's time to repent. If you felt divided, disillusioned, or distant from God, He's not mad at you, He misses you. Jesus is calling His people back to prayer, back to truth, back to Him. This is no longer about Donald Trump, the Philippines, or America. This is about eternity. This is about where your heart really belongs.
Tell them I am not coming back for a political party. I am coming back for a pure bride, a church that loves like I do.
So if you feel stirred, don't just feel, act. Start by praying right now. Ask Jesus to open your eyes. Ask Him to heal your home, your heart, your country, and then join us. Subscribe to Pinoy Faith Stories for more powerful stories like this one, real testimonies of hope, healing, and encounters with the living God. Like this video if it moved you. Comment below, what did Jesus speak to your heart today? Hit the bell so you never miss a message that could change your life. Don't scroll away unchanged. Don't let this is just be another video. Let it be the moment your faith was reborn, because the world is watching, and more than ever, it needs to see Jesus in us. Let's be that light. Let's be that love. Let's be the difference. Maraming salamat for watching. God bless you. And may you carry this message wherever you go. This was Pinoy Faith Stories, where eternity meets testimony.